The night pressed heavy over I-95, the stretch of highway between Washington, D.C. and Fort Bragg nothing but a blur of headlights and shadows. Lieutenant General Marcus Tate, his silver hair catching the dashboard's muted glow, steered his rental sedan off an exit he barely noticed until the hunger clawed too deep to ignore. Greystone, Virginia. Population: blink and you miss it. The town unfolded like a scene trapped in the 1950s, a lone gas station, a diner named Ruby's flickering under a broken neon R. That was all Marcus needed. He pulled into the gravel lot, the dust swirling up around the sleek government-issued vehicle. 6 hours behind the wheel wore on him, even with decades of stamina honed in war zones most Americans only read about. His stomach growled, sharp and demanding. Marcus wore his dress blues, sharp, pressed, immaculate, not for show, but because protocol demanded it. 3 stars gleamed on each shoulder, ribbons spanning his chest in a silent story of sacrifices, battles, and unspoken costs. In another town, they would have earned nods, salutes, quiet thanks. In Greystone, they caught different eyes. He stepped out of the car, boots crunching on gravel, the cool Virginia air wrapping around him. Inside Ruby's, the bell over the door jingled. Heads turned. Truckers paused mid-bite. A family with kids froze forks halfway to their mouths. Jenny, the waitress, smiled, not the fake kind, but the real one, a little curious, a little cautious. Marcus slid into a booth, back to the wall, old habits, and ordered a cheeseburger and coffee. He checked his phone, updates from the Pentagon, a text from Sheila, "Love you. Come home safe." He smiled at that, feeling the weight of home tugging at him even as duty called further south. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, Marcus was just a man grabbing dinner. Or so he thought. Across the parking lot, Officers Dale Ramsey and Travis Holt leaned against their cruiser, killing time with cigarettes and bored glances. Ramsey was heavy-set, a man hardened not by service but by bitterness and too many unchallenged years in uniform. Holt was younger, leaner, his buzz cut gleaming under the diner's flickering light. Their eyes caught Marcus immediately. "Fancy wheels for this dump," Ramsey muttered, blowing smoke toward the stars. "Yeah," Holt replied, cocky grin spreading. "Military plates, too. Bet he's one of those wannabes. Playing dress-up. They didn't check the plates. Didn't radio dispatch. Didn't walk over for a simple hello. They didn't even wonder why a man would wear medals they couldn't even name. No, they saw what they wanted to see, a black man in a pristine uniform that, in their minds, didn't belong to him. Their suspicion wasn't about law. It was about the story they wanted to believe, the one where a man like Marcus could only be a fraud, not a hero. Ramsey flicked his cigarette into the gravel, the ember hissing out. He adjusted his belt, feeling the gun heavy on his hip. It wasn't just suspicion burning in his chest now. It was resentment, resentment for the man he didn't know but already hated for daring to walk proud. Inside Ruby's, Marcus sipped his coffee, savoring the greasy comfort of a small-town diner meal. His guard wasn't down, it never was, but he didn't see the storm building just beyond the glass. Marcus stood to leave, sliding a few bills under the salt shaker for Jenny, more than enough to cover the meal and a tip that said thank you for your kindness. He straightened his tie, his boots clicking against the checkered tile. Outside, the air was colder now, a biting wind pushing against him as he approached his sedan. He barely got his keys in hand when the command cracked across the lot, "HUI! Freeze!" Marcus stopped immediately, body still, hand hovering above his pocket. The training was too deep, the instincts too strong to ignore. He turned slowly, hands open, non-threatening, facing the source of the voice. Ramsey, flashlight blinding his vision, hand twitching at his holster. "Evening, officers," Marcus said, his voice a careful blend of polite and commanding. "Something I can help you with?" "That's a hell of a costume," Ramsey sneered, the flashlight stabbing down Marcus's body like an accusation. Holt flanked the other side, smirking, posture coiled for a takedown. "Mind telling me where you got it?" Ramsey demanded. Marcus kept his voice even. "It's not a costume. Lieutenant General Marcus Tate, United States Army." "Sure you are," Holt barked a laugh. "Got ID for that fairy tale?" Marcus nodded. No sudden moves. He reached slowly toward his pocket. Left side. "Wallet." "Slow," Ramsey barked, stepping closer, tension snapping in the cold night air. Marcus drew the wallet with 2 fingers, offering it out, calm, measured. Holt snatched it, flipping through. The ID was crisp, official, undeniable. Marcus Tate, 3 stars, authenticated clearance. Holt barely glanced at it before tossing it to Ramsey with a shrug. Could be fake. Doesn't look like any general I ever seen, Ramsey growled, eyes narrowed, missing everything important because he refused to look. Marcus met his gaze, unblinking. And how many black generals have you met, officer? Or is the problem that I don't match your picture? The words hung between them, sharp as broken glass. The crowd was gathering now. Truckers, gas station clerks, Jenny standing frozen in Ruby's doorway, the glow of cell phone cameras blinking to life. The tension broke not with a word, but with a shove. Hands on the car. Ramsey barked, already moving forward, already deciding Marcus was guilty no matter what the ID said. I'm not resisting, Marcus said, voice calm, projecting it loud enough for witnesses to hear. But I will not comply with unlawful orders. You have no grounds to detain me. That was the trigger. Ramsey lunged, grabbing Marcus's wrist in a crushing grip, twisting hard. Marcus didn't resist. Resisting would only give them the excuse they wanted. But he couldn't stop the jolt of pain as Ramsey slammed him chest first onto the hood of the sedan, the metal cold even through the heavy dress blues. You wanna play smart? Ramsey hissed, hot breath stinking of cigarettes and rage. See how that goes. The cuffs snapped tight, too tight, cutting into Marcus's wrists. Holt yanked open the cruiser's door like he was winning a game show prize. Marcus didn't shout, didn't thrash. He kept his voice low, cutting through the adrenaline haze. My phone's in my right pocket. Call the number labeled Pentagon. Do it now, or you'll wish you had. Ramsey sneered, shoving him harder. Save your bluff for the judge. Behind them, Jenny's voice shook but held strong. Dale, stop. He didn't do anything. Back off, Jenny. Ramsey snapped, finger jabbing at her, the authority in his voice cracking under the weight of what he was doing. But she didn't back off. She filmed. The truckers filmed. The crowd filmed. Marcus sat in the back of the cruiser, the leather seat sticking to his uniform, the night pressing against the windows. He watched them through the glass, the faces of Greystone, and he knew this wasn't about him anymore. It was bigger now. At the Greystone police station, the world narrowed into sickly fluorescent lights and stained linoleum floors. Marcus sat in a cramped interrogation room, still cuffed, still dignified, still every inch the general they refused to see. Ramsey and Holt lounged at the door, laughing, sipping terrible coffee. They cracked jokes about fakers, about guys who bought their medals online. The call was made. Not because Chief Callahan wanted to, but because too many eyes were watching now. Jenny had already posted the first video online. The station's dispatcher had seen it. So had the mayor's office. So had a local congressman's aide. The town's whisper network moved faster than any patrol car ever could. Callahan grumbled as he dialed the secure line listed on Marcus's official ID. His hands shook, just a little, betraying the nerves he couldn't swallow down. The voice that answered was crisp, cold, measured. This is Colonel Evans, Pentagon Operations. Identify yourself. Callahan cleared his throat. Chief Ed Callahan. Greystone Police. We've got a man here claiming to be Lieutenant General Marcus Tate. Silence. A dangerous silence. Then, describe him. Callahan stumbled through it. Tall, black, mid-50s, full-dress uniform. 3 stars. Medals. Presents that couldn't be faked if you tried. Another pause. Then the colonel's voice dropped into a register that demanded immediate obedience. You are holding Lieutenant General Marcus Tate, Commander of Joint Special Operations Command, recipient of the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Bronze Star, Silver Star, and Legion of Merit, among others. Callahan's face drained of color. We thought, he stammered. You thought wrong, Colonel Evans snapped. Release him. Apologize. Then pray he doesn't press charges. The line went dead. The fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, too hot. Callahan's collar tightened around his thick neck. Sweat prickled his forehead. He turned to look at Marcus through the narrow window of the interrogation room. And for the first time that night, Callahan saw the truth. They hadn't arrested a faker. They had assaulted a hero. The door swung open. Ramsey and Holt straightened, faces still cocky, for about 2 seconds. Then they saw Callahan's face. It wasn't anger written there. It was fear. The kind of fear you feel when you realize you didn't just screw up, you detonated your own career. "Get him out of the cuffs," Callahan barked, voice shaking. Ramsey hesitated. Just for a heartbeat. A reflex to dig in deeper. But the chief's glare burned through whatever bravado he still clung to. Holt fumbled with the cuffs, struggling with the lock, his hands stupid and clumsy now. When the metal fell away, Marcus flexed his wrists slowly, blood returning in sharp pins and needles. He rose, every inch of him radiating a quiet fury more devastating than any shouted curse. Ramsey tried for a grin. "Just a little misunderstanding, General." Marcus cut him off with a look. A look that reminded Ramsey of every superior officer he'd ever been terrified to disappoint. "You will refer to me as Sir," Marcus said, his voice cutting sharper than any blade. Ramsey swallowed hard. Marcus turned his eyes on Holt next, not saying a word, and Holt wilted under the weight of it. The silence stretched long enough to crush what little dignity they had left. And it wasn't even close to over. "General Tate," Callahan began, voice low, hands spread like a man trying to corral an avalanche, "this whole thing's been a mistake. A terrible, terrible misunderstanding. I hope you'll accept our deepest apologies." Marcus said nothing. Callahan pressed on, words tumbling over each other. "There's no need for this to get bigger. We can fix this internally. Quietly. Handle discipline on our end." Marcus studied him. Not with anger. With pity. Like watching a drowning man refuse the life raft because his pride wouldn't let him grab it. "You assaulted a senior officer of the United States Army," Marcus said quietly. "You unlawfully detained me. You humiliated me publicly. You endangered my life. And now you want a backroom apology." Callahan flinched. "Look, General, sir, we're willing to offer a public statement. Maybe a medal. Key to the city, even. Whatever you want." The desperation stank worse than the stale coffee clinging to Callahan's uniform. Marcus's lips twitched, not a smile. Something colder. "I don't want your keys," he said. "I want accountability." Callahan's face sagged. He realized then that no cheap ceremony would patch this. No backroom deal would silence it. The walls of Greystone's old ways, the silent rules that said you could bury mistakes like this, had just been shattered. And Marcus was going to make sure the world saw the pieces. By morning, the video had over 2 million views. Jenny's footage caught everything: the aggressive shouting, the disrespect, the wrongful arrest. Marcus, never once raising his voice. Marcus, dignified even as they twisted his arms behind him. News vans descended on Greystone like locusts. Reporters with microphones and questions sharp as razors pressed against the police station's crumbling walls. Marcus stood on the steps, dress blues immaculate despite the long night, the bruises on his wrists hidden but not forgotten. He didn't shout. He didn't rant. He spoke. "My name is Lieutenant General Marcus Tate," he began, voice carrying over the gathered crowd. "I have served this nation for 32 years. I have led men into battle. I have buried friends in Arlington. I have defended the ideals we say we hold sacred." He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle on the shoulders of everyone listening. "Last night I was judged not by my actions, not by my service, not by my character, but by the color of my skin and the assumptions carried by 2 small-minded officers." The air was electric. Cameras clicked. Pens scratched. America leaned in. "I will not be silent. Not for convenience. Not for comfort. Because silence is complicity." He looked directly into the cameras now, a general addressing his country. "This is not just about me. It's about every unseen injustice that never got filmed. It's about the systems that allow this to happen over and over again." Another pause. Deliberate. Crushing. "And I intend to see it changed." The cheers broke like a wave. And Greystone, The little town that had thought itself too small to matter found itself at the heart of a storm. Within hours, Marcus's speech was everywhere: CNN, Fox, MSNBC, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Hashtag General Tate trended globally. Pundits debated. Veterans called in, their voices raw with fury and pride. Politicians issued statements, some hollow, some heartfelt. Retired generals posted photos standing in solidarity, their rows of medals gleaming against aging uniforms. The Secretary of Defense called Marcus personally. The President requested a meeting. Meanwhile, Greystone scrambled like ants on a kicked anthill. The mayor announced an immediate and independent investigation. Ramsey and Holt were placed on unpaid leave, a token gesture that fooled no one. Chief Callahan offered his resignation before it could be demanded. But it wasn't enough. Lawsuits loomed. Justice Department inquiries opened. Civil rights organizations poured into town, setting up hotlines, filing briefs, preparing for battle. Marcus, for his part, remained steady. He hadn't asked for this storm. But he would see it through. Because for every man and woman who ever wore the uniform, who ever believed in the ideal that America could be better than its worst instincts, Marcus owed them that much. The weight of stars on his shoulders had never felt heavier. Or more necessary. The helicopter blades beat the air into submission as Marine One touched down on the south lawn. Marcus adjusted his tie, the crisp navy fabric of his Class A uniform catching the late afternoon sun. 3 stars glinted on his shoulders. Behind them, a nation's shame. Ahead, a nation's hope. An aide rushed to greet him, ushering him inside. The West Wing smelled of fresh polish and old history, power thick in the air like humidity. They led him into the Oval Office. And there, behind the resolute desk, stood the President of the United States. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. Not from fear. From the sheer weight of it, how a single act of injustice had hurled him from a suburban sidewalk to the center of global attention. "General Tate," the President said warmly, crossing the room. "It's an honor." They shook hands. Cameras clicked in the background. History recording every frame. "I wanted to meet you personally," the President said, "to thank you. And to listen." They sat. No teleprompters. No staffers feeding lines. Just 2 men, one carrying the burden of the nation, the other carrying the burden of its soul. Marcus spoke plainly. About Greystone. About systemic rot. About dignity stolen and courage demanded. The President listened. Then he did what few expected. He asked Marcus to lead a new national commission on police reform and civil rights. The offer hung in the air, heavy, impossible, necessary. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He didn't need glory. He didn't seek power. But maybe, just maybe, he could make sure no one else would ever have to endure what he had. He extended his hand again. "I accept." The President smiled. History bent, just a little, in the right direction. Back in Greystone, the reckoning was just beginning. The town council, cornered by public outrage and national attention, voted unanimously to disband the existing police force. A new department would be built from scratch. Outside oversight committees. Mandatory racial bias training. Psychological evaluations. Body cameras. Zero-tolerance policies for misconduct. Ramsey and Holt were fired outright. No pension, no quiet reassignment. Callahan. He slunk away in disgrace, retirement papers signed with trembling hands, knowing history would remember him for this, not for his decades of service, but for the rot he had allowed to grow unchecked. The new police chief was an outsider, a Latina woman, former FBI. Her first act? Publicly apologizing to Marcus, not with platitudes, but with real reforms. Meanwhile, Marcus refused interviews. He refused grandstanding. He'd done his part. The town had to do the rest. Still, driving down Main Street weeks later, seeing kids riding bikes without fear, neighbors talking across fences instead of hiding behind them, Marcus allowed himself the smallest flicker of hope. Change didn't come easy. It didn't come clean. But in Greystone, it had come. The Pentagon ceremony was somber. Dignified. Not a celebration, a reckoning. Marcus stood at the center of the Hall of Heroes, The marble walls bearing the names of those who had bled for the idea of America, even when America forgot them. The Secretary of Defense pinned a new medal to Marcus's chest, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Not for valor in combat. Marcus already had more than enough of those. This one was for something rarer, valor at home. He hadn't fought an enemy abroad. He had fought the quiet, insidious enemy within, and won. Veterans saluted him. Activists embraced him. Families sent letters, telling him how he had given them hope, dignity, courage. For once, the weight on Marcus's shoulders didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a promise. And he intended to keep it. Late at night, in the quiet of his modest home, Marcus sat alone. The television was off. The ceremony medals tucked away. The world's noise muted behind thick curtains. He looked down at his hands, calloused, strong, scarred from a lifetime of battles big and small. Fame hadn't healed the bruises. Justice hadn't erased the memory of cold cuffs biting into his skin. Change came at a price. Friends he'd trusted fell silent. Enemies he'd never known emerged from the shadows, whispering slanders and doubts. Even allies sometimes used his name more for their own cause than his truth. Marcus bore it all. Not because he wanted it, but because it was necessary. He thought of the young black kids watching his story online, seeing that dignity could survive humiliation, that courage didn't always wear armor or carry a rifle. That sometimes, courage looked like a man refusing to bow his head, even when every system demanded he do so. In the darkness, Marcus allowed himself a small, tired smile. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tonight, he had earned peace. Spring came late that year. Dogwoods blossomed along Greystone streets. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. Marcus returned home quietly, without fanfare. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid him now waved, awkward but sincere. Kids on bicycles stopped and saluted him, grinning wide. An elderly veteran on his porch raised a trembling hand in a solemn salute as Marcus passed. And Marcus? He simply smiled, nodding in return, offering grace where he could have demanded penance. The vegetable garden in his backyard, once neglected, now flourished, wild and stubborn and glorious. Marcus knelt among the rows, letting the rich soil crumble between his fingers, feeling something ancient and grounding rise through him. He wasn't a hashtag anymore. He wasn't a headline. He was a man. A citizen. A soldier still, in the ways that mattered most. And in the quiet of his own small corner of the world, Marcus Tate finally, fully, came home.